Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Deep Learning with PolyAI podcast. I'm your host, Damien. I'm here with CEO and co-founder of PolyAI, Nikola Merchant. Hey, Nikola, how you doing today?
Hi, Damien. Not bad. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm not actually Damien. I am a generative AI video and avatar that was created because I figure everyone else is using generative AI to do their work. Why not I do the same? You and I talked about at the end of a recent recording making a completely generative episode of the podcast that is coming up soon. I am very excited to see that come to fruition. But it got me thinking, Nicola, that you know there are recent reports that came out. Adobe had one. I know that McKinsey had one as well that
Yeah.
talked about how consumer adoption of generative AI specifically, but just AI tools in general, is at an all-time high. People get it. They know what's great about it. They're trying it out. They're sampling it.
Yeah.
And according to Adobe, some more than half the people in America have at least tried generative AI tools once. And of those who use it regularly, more than half use it every single day. So suffice it to say,
Yeah.
generative AI is of itself entrenched. It is the tool. Obviously, we go to work many of those days of every single day. And
Yeah.
so the question is how, what I wanted to talk about today is how are we seeing employees along the
Mhm.
hierarchy, along the various organizational tiers? How are we seeing your employees today utilizing generative AI? And what are some signs that maybe it's getting overutilized? I know that recently you talked about when people use it or when it first came out and students were using it to cheat. They were having like GPT writing at performing. You're like, well, the way we do that,
I think they still are, no?
probably,
I
and
hope they
there's
are.
some non-savvy professors haven't caught up. But it's like, all right, so how do we take that to the next level? And how do we say, all right, we recognize this as a tool in the roster. It's very, very powerful. Here's how you use it effectively. So I thought we'd chat about that today. First of all, what are some of the pros and cons as a generative AI expert? What are some of the pros and cons you see of having this technology in the modern workplace? What are some great use cases, some not so great use cases? And maybe we'll just dive into some details from there.
I mean, look, I think that AI is a great equalizer, but then equally, I think it increases, um, it increases the disparity between like people who can use technology well and those that can't even further, right? So I imagine that when Google became what it is, I think people who knew how to do that were like infinitely more productive than someone sourcing that information elsewhere, right? And yeah, they had to be sure that the information's right. They had to have a healthy look, skepticism, but it gave them really helpful pointers really fast, right? So
Sure.
like, if you have those, then you're like, great, okay. Like I think that the answer is this. Now I'll go to my trusted sources and I'll just validate it. And it happens to be right. Great. I'm done like way faster, right? So similarly, I think, the mundane part, and I think it's like, it's hard to trust this data because I suspect that a lot of those people that use it every day used it for a set of limits. I know a bunch of people that
Oh,
use it every
probably.
day, right?
Yeah.
Right. Bullet points to be like, pull this into a very nice for both email. And honestly, if they send those bullet points over, that would probably be more efficient communication. But hey, pomp and circumstance, right? So still saves them time. And honestly gets better emails written. But then, what's funny on the other side is people use them to read emails and summarize things. So
Right.
don't the house wins the way. And, hopefully, it's a layer that helps everyone be a bit more productive. That's great.
Right. That's true. It could be that skewed data point because also it's not like those over half of people who use it every day are going to the actual portal to the application itself and typing in prompts. It's probably just a function that's based into their current work suite as it is. And it's like, oh, I might as well give this a try. The little assistant button pops up that, hey, can we make this a little tighter for you? And you say, yeah, why not? So maybe that does sort of factor in is the instance that it's being baked into so many functional productivity tools anyway.
Well, we say that, but I mean, in the preparation for this call, you and I tried to do an example in Microsoft Copilot in PowerPoint, which is, I think, one of the best demos that I've seen in general. And what I think about 10 minutes in, we gave up, even though like they, I saw some rapper that looked like, again, or GPT in a more of a Microsoft Life environment. I'm like, hey, just give me my Copilot. I didn't manage yet. I'll try to do it for the next episode. But it tells you something. I think there's a discovery issue that I frankly should
Okay.
be worked on a bit more because, people should be using it or should be made available easily. I think that a lot of those users, I've spoken to like CIOs of a very large company who saw the power of this technology. They themselves are power users, and then they got a subscription so that every single employee has it, right? And maybe they've tried it, maybe not, but like for the most part, they don't use it. Because again, that's the discovery issue. Like what
Right.
will help you with it, right? But then, the second thing is like, what should you be using it for? And there, I think like early Google, like you'll get burned easily, maybe more easily if you trust it blindly, which is why you maybe don't want to roll it out as aggressively to everyone until, you know, society takes all these nuances into account and just trains up the average member of the population that, it's a pretty sharp tool, right? You can cut yourself, but it can really
Right.
be good, right? So like if you're just using it to generate information and, one thing is off and then you build many assumptions on it, you write your whole memo on it, like you're gonna look like an idiot.
Yeah, just like
You
early Google search, trust but verify a little bit. So trust but triangulate. In this instance, the same way. So where are some of
They don't know.
what's that?
Even with Google today, we found never, but like, you still gotta have a healthy dose of tips.
In every element of the internet, I mean, your social media feeds and the
Oh, more
like.
than ever now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you said you talk to a lot of business owners when it comes to how look, this is a great thing; it should be utilized. Where do you think it strikes the most immediate value, that low hanging fruit of enterprise individual utilization in an enterprise? A lot of the studies that come back say sales and marketing, like you were talking about, like creating emails, maybe summarizing emails, that sort of thing, written communication. What are some other business functions do you think where generative AI has real stickiness and immediate value?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think that like creating content, both text, images, audio, everything, right? It's getting there, and it's getting there really fast, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think like if you're like a marketing, well, like world's your oyster. You can now like do really impressive things that would have been days of iteration now, and you can polish and tweak and do things that are really, really cool, right? Um, there's like the communication piece. I think most people use it for that. It's very mundane, but like the number of my colleagues told me, hey, I was sick and tired of people telling me my English sucked. So now I just run it. Well, like, that guy's not using a lot of GPT because his emails got really good.
Really?
Right? Oh yeah. I won't name
So
it.
it's, I
But
mean, I can see
it's
that sort of the next stage of like Google Translate is going and actually make me sound like I'm a native, English speaker, which includes some nuances and some like colloquial that a standard translate wouldn't.
I wouldn't even go that far. I think just like, if you're, I don't know, 12 and you don't have articles in your native tongue.
Or
No,
time for the a and an. Okay.
I don't know. I still don't know where they, frankly. But like chances are you're emitting a few of them or you worked really hard your whole life to get to a point where, and then you're probably overusing, right? Like I remember getting to a point where, my English teachers were like, you don't really need it here. Like, but can I have it? Yes. Then I'll have it just in case I could get it wrong, right? And that's all like giveaways that you're not a native. But I'm not talking about like the necessity of being a native. I think that for a lot of people who, you know, I think many native speakers don't appreciate how much slower a non-native is in doing work in not non-native language, right? So your colleagues writing emails to you who are, where English is a second language, they spend a lot longer writing them. They spend a lot of time correcting them, right? Like you are far more comfortable making a mistake in English than any non-native is because you cannot be judged for it. So just
Ah,
huge. It's
interesting.
work. You know how big this is? It's like it's much more than like that subtle, like, can you turn me into like more of a native? Like, I don't care. I'm confident enough. But there are many people who, are learning English since the age of 2 and hence think that they can speak it as well, even if they sound Serbian, right? Like, but I think that for a lot of people, it takes up a large part of it. And now, like, they love it. That's the most positive sentiment I've seen.
It's wild. I mean, and it so happens to coincide with sort of the globalization of the workforce anyway, post COVID. I mean, people are working for companies that never had an international presence and that now do. So how do you sort of immerse yourself immediately into the corporate culture? You leverage these generative tools to sort of fast forward that integration.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and just like makes people lives easier. That's what it's love. That's the one example I can think of where I've just seen people, look. be hyper excited. Like, hey, like it gave me that. I like a hack. Right? Yeah. Brings a lot of joy, right, to people. That's one I can think of. I think a lot of people use like, oh my God, I gotta read it. Please summarize it for me. Are there risks? Yeah, probably some. Right?
Yeah.
The other risk, of course, is people should know that they're pasting like, confidential data, etc. I think OpenAI is really good at like, building models that don't like overfit in ways that they shouldn't, but prompted the right way, maybe, people learn something about your business, about your personal identifiable information. Yeah, you put it in, and, just a thing to keep in mind as you share. But of course, I think there will be interpretations, and there are already alarms and things where you can do it in a way where you're not sharing. So I think that's
Right.
fine. But to me, like, data, there's all kinds of data, like how you interpret it, right? Um, a lot of people use it, but I think those use cases around just like communication
Yeah.
and improving it are like number one by far.
So
Uh,
when we look at those instances where it's sort of sanctioned and utilize, like you said, the enterprise versions of these LLMs that are sort of scrubbed to make sure that you don't accidentally trip up and, share a PII of customers who are
no.
themselves.
I think those additions are there to tell you that you can do it. Your state. This is our instance of say ChatGPT or some other LLM. So like feel free because if you're using the general one, right?
Sure. Yeah.
They can use data, but like they will offer a version where that's not the case. So it's just like I think for
Right.
enterprises that's okay, but for the regular Joe, like a lot of people are like paying for their own subscription. Yeah.
Exactly.
And okay,
Or just like old school search and other old school web tools are using the free version, which begs the
yeah,
question, when does a business and at what point does sanctioning sort of the use of the general free version by their employees, at what point do businesses need to step back and say, maybe we should try and structure this so we can have some governance over how it's leveraged in our business. And it's going to vary from industry to industry. You're running a plumbing company or something like that. There's not a ton of concern about like safety and standards, but if you're doing ambulatory care or some sort of medical practice, there's a lot that you need to be concerned about. So where is that like I'll turn a blind eye to you using it because I know it's being used to we need to have some sort of model over how we manage this internally.
I think it's very simple. I think you basically have access control. Like, can you log in and use it on your browser or not? I mean, this is the oldest. But like people, that's why people hate working for big companies, right? It's like I remember interning in like investment banks and like, their com doesn't work. Doesn't work. Oh man, like now it really has to work, right? And it's what it is, right? I think that's not that hard in terms of like limiting access. Is it the right thing to do? Well, I don't know. Um, Thinking about the other applications, obviously we've got, I think, the creatives that use it for like creating
Yeah.
images, for writing a lot of text. I think that gets a wild amount of usage for SEO. Um, and pretty good at that, right? Just
Yeah.
creating content that will get indexed. Um, Really like what I think many are starting to believe that your website's going to matter a whole lot less, and the information picked up by LLMs, which will, things go the way that I think most LLM providers, cloud providers hope, they'll get closer to you as your main interface to technology and to information and to databases. If that is the case, then I think companies will have to work pretty hard to make sure that the right kind of data is fed into these LLMs so that they can then serve that as information relevant and pertinent to um, um, the user, the end user. And if the consumer, if the average consumer is using LLMs, um, maybe a great new channel into the internet, then it becomes really important that
This
control.
that's a bold statement to say that because here's what I'm imagining based on what you just is that historically I hear of a company, I go to Google, I Google
Yeah,
the URL, I go to their website, it's they built it, so it's
yeah,
all pretty
yeah,
pro
yeah,
that
yeah,
company,
yeah, yeah.
etc. Okay, it's managed, got data. Now, next, I don't go to a browser. I don't go to a search engine. I go to an LLM and I say, tell me about this company. And they pretty much it fabricate a made to order website or repository of information about that company that wraps the good, the bad, the indifferent based on data points throughout the internet, and then puts it in front of me. So what you're saying is that polished marketing website of days gone by is going to be less relevant as LLMs take over.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm just like trying now something, and I've asked it in about choosing between like us and one of our competitors, right? And
Who shall not be named?
I will name now. And let me just ask it for like what are the core key differences?
There you go. Well, let's do an accuracy check too to see what it says. I think that'd be
Sure,
interesting.
sure. And we're not at all biased, right?
Okay. So that's what our viewers or listeners should do right now. Just go ahead and do ask an LLM to do a comparison and see how unbiased the information is. I think that makes sense. My question there at that point though, and maybe this is a little bit of the infrastructural nuances that I just don't understand, but where does the data reside then? How if it doesn't have sites to creep and crawl and scrape, where is it getting its information from?
So, okay, for example, I've asked it, I saw a thing, it says, choose PolyAI for versatile and complex interactions, choose another company for efficient customer service automation. So I asked them, so PolyAI is better for complex tasks? Yes, PolyAI is generally better suited for handling complex tasks.
That there's the commercial portion. That's the sponsored portion of the podcast.
No, not really, not really, right? Because I could then ask, is the other company better at anything, right? And, um, like it says, like the other one is effective at simple calls. So like, I think it's being pretty correct, like, politically correct to both companies.
Sure.
Um, and it's just a function of websites. I know our website, I know this company's website, and it's just, you know, um, it's a function of what we've put there, what they've put there, right? The interesting
So the
is
websites will still be important, but it'll be important as an information source and not so much as a source of organic traffic.
here's where it's really funny, right? Because people attribute superhuman, there are forms of superhuman intelligence when it comes to LLMs, and they'll continue to be even more superhuman.
Yeah.
People like to trust what they're saying because they'll be like, hey, it's read everything, right? But I think what I'm seeing here is a lot of information from our website, from the other company's website. This is not someone who's done deep work, spoken to clients, etc. It's just like he said, she said, right?
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Like that gets stopped, right? Just like, the company a leader in that world. All the websites go like, hey, we're a leader in X, right? Like, can you verify? What do you think? Like, whatever. And, it gets difficult. So I think it'll be hard, especially if people look to just do something quickly.
Yeah.
It's not on an exam, but maybe like a real workflow like this one. I think the interesting thing then becomes like, hey, like, how did you arrive at the answer, right? Like, why do you think this is true? So if you trust it too easily, I think you're at risk of getting, like wrong answers. And
Right.
I think it's just going to be interesting. 'Cause, we mentioned SEO. This is not a form of SEO, right?
It really is. Yeah.
And really, honestly, like you go and regenerate your website and 1,000 links, make sure they're all indexed. There's going to be an abundance of you repeating that you're better at someone else than someone else than they are compared to you. And you might just swing the vote, and LLMs might start recommending one vendor right?
I would have to assume that LLMs are a little bit more savvy than the old school SEO hacks of doing like an invisible font at the bottom of the page with a bunch of key search terms that just drove organic traffic because you're hacking, a search algorithm. In this case, because it's so natural language focused, like it's really looking for that that content in a natural language context, I would assume.
Well, look, I mean, it just has text. Like, how does that text is collected and used is
But
really
the wizards behind the
well,
cloth, right?
it's just like who collects the data and how. And the fact that it's not such great volume means that you open it up for just like, you know, um, subterfuge where smart people figure out and reverse
Yes.
engineer how it's being collected, and then they'll make sure that what they want in there will get in.
Check.
And then we're hopefully, at a point where, um, with increased reasoning capability, maybe the system can spot contradictions, or maybe, OpenAI can simulate these tasks many times, provide feedback, right, around what was a good and what was a bad answer. And I suspect that if this becomes a major issue, they'll limit it so that you get the dreaded as a conversational agent. I cannot give you any advice and blah, 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 blah.
Fair, yeah.
And but then people find a way to break that. So it's a brave new world, right? And at the end of the day, hopefully, you'll have like third-party information and stuff. And
Yeah.
people will also know that maybe they shouldn't be asking ChatGPT, right? The same way that, but if they Google it online, they'll at least get things like G2, Compare, Gartner, like this customer review.
Yeah.
They'll look at website. They'll make like independent value judgments on this company looks good. Company looks good. Oh, look at the logos. Wow, like PolyAI works with, I don't know, Jackson Marriott, like UPS. I should definitely work with them and not any other company, right?
Sure.
Like that can make that value judgment. I've said that I work for a company. Which one should I talk to, right? And the answer I'm getting, a bit of time. So hopefully some
No,
work is being done, right?
deep
Real time.
scrubbing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think it's more like, searches online basically contribute to the RAG of this answer, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm getting a pretty bland answer around strengths and weaknesses.
So it won't be definitive.
Not for now. It's written in an essay which says nothing, but it's probably right. Leaving the value judgment to the clients.
Let's bring it back into the enterprise. So you said one way that people managers can sort of like, or enterprise or large organization that where they know this is being utilized within their walls. One way they can sort of like establish whether or not they should have some element of governance is, can they log in within your network? Okay, great. That's going to be pretty much a supersedent. So every organization should probably have some level of visibility into this. What are some signs that people managers, and I know this is kind of a general question, so feel free to give a general answer, but what are some signs that people managers can look out for that maybe their teams are overutilizing generative AI, and it's actually starting to be counterproductive?
I don't know. I mean, that's really tough, right? I think it depends on like what the nature of work. What do you have in mind? Which function?
Well, I mean, one of the low hanging fruits is content creation. You could go there and you could say, I want to write a blog post, so GPT write it for me. Which, I think it's a good start. I see that as being sort of foundational copy, right? Then you go in and you make your tweaks, you make it a little more on brand with regards to voice, et cetera, and then you push play. But what happens when that's every time? What happens when you don't do that second layer of editing
Man,
and
sounds
curation?
good. Sounds good. Then do you need like that person in a full-time job?
Yes.
Like, well, right? You need them for the value judgment of it or not, but maybe they can do something else in addition to it, right? But yeah, like, I mean, us getting more productive means that inevitably some functions end up bigger, some functions end up smaller, really, right?
Yeah.
Or end up more productive, right? Like maybe instead of writing those 5 blog posts for the sake of SEO, you pump out 500 and, you're covered when it comes to SEO, but maybe you need to write it in a different way to make sure that it no one picks it up so that when it does value judgments, it's ruling in your favor, right? So yeah.
So the sign that maybe you're overutilizing it is that you're bumping yourself out of your position, because it could wait. Maybe it should be a self-regulation tool. Like don't do it so much where you're rendering yourself ineffectual in your current position. That makes some sense. All right. So let's say it gets to that point in a function. How do you as a people manager sort of reverse course? How do you go about setting some guidelines that can be adopted to negate any sort of overutilization, or, if you start to see the writing on the wall, preempt it getting to that point? What are some good practices that people leaders can deploy to, keep utilization in check?
There's no such thing as like, too much. I think the question is like, are they using it inappropriately? Are you seeing like if you're seeing performance go down because people are, the quality of work changed and it has to do with this, you must train them and educate them on how to use this to just improve their productivity rather than inject noise into their work, right? There's no
All
such
right.
thing as too much. It's a productivity tool. It's just saying, hey, like Damien, you're using that keyboard too much. Like I want you to start using a pen because I like your handwriting. Like, you know,
That's a good way to put it.
well, no, like I prefer it if you continue using the keyboard, if you can type really fast, right? So, I don't think I think it's just a matter of
You
like,
just don't
hey,
type garbage. That's the thing. Is
no, no,
don't type
it's
garbage.
for other people, the people who, what I was going to say, like, the people who are excited about the communication piece, that's really low hanging fruit. I know that a lot of those people were previously really excited about using Grammarly as a tool, right?
Yeah, sure.
Now they have like anything and better, it does more of the heavy lifting for them rather than just fixing sentences. It's like writes an email based on instructions. They're really happy, but for every one of those, I found a number of people who are like, yeah, I have it already. Or like they don't really know. I show them things like, wow. And then like a month later, man, not really, right? It has to be in the workflow, the fingertip in a way that really makes sense because we're over indexing for those hackers. So what was the stat? Like 180 million active users by some metric, right? And if you say that the total addressable I mean, that number is actually really high, like already, like surprisingly high. So they're
Yeah.
doing, they're doing well, right? But I would really like to double click on the active, right? Like, drawing like really funny images is like,
Yeah.
that I do, on a weekend where I'm like bored, right? Um, that doesn't mean that I'm using it productively. Like, in fact, I don't think I'm boost my productivity all that much.
Is it zapping productivity because you're just using it to make kooky images?
Well, that's creepy, but yeah.
I said kooky, thank you, not creepy.
Creepy. Okay.
I just,
Uh,
I just, I just tried Imogen to make two pasta shaped, or no, two kaiju's made of pasta. Each was made of a different kind of pasta, fighting in the streets of Boston, and the results were mid at best. So nice try, Google.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had like business meetings with like pork scratchings and noodles draining from the ceiling and stuff like that. It's great stuff. But look, I think that it's not a separate at all. I think like you got to learn how to. I think we'll find better ways to do it.
Right.
Um, and like we just need to integrate into more people's workflows. Because not everyone is like a hacker who wants to do it. Most people are comfortable doing what they're doing and
Yeah.
don't like change. So I think like it just has to. It can't be clippy, right? It has to be better than that. And I loved Clippy when I was a
Is
kid.
there anything better than Clippy? I mean, that was
Not better than Clippy. Clippy, like I remember going to my mom's work computer at the time and like just seeing that thing. I was like, "Well, this is like the coolest thing ever." I said, "Well, pretty weird, right?" But I think like it just has to like flow, like like email writing, like autocomplete stuff like that. Like Gmail has some nice features. Yeah, it's we'll see.
All right, Phil, let's go beyond that then. What are some other functions aren't currently utilizing generative AI that probably could? And maybe if not now, given current iterations and capabilities in the near future, do you see what sort of business functions where generative AI will really attack that?
Well, look, I mean, I think that what do we do in terms of like customer service automation and providing, voice assistant, chatbot, et cetera, at scale is a place where businesses will use it a lot. Does that mean that many people end up using a lot of it? Unclear, right? It will impact the work of a lot of people, right? Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I'm not sure, right? I think that
Right.
like it's really like the office suite that I'm excited about, right? For like, people who spend a lot of time making presentations, Excel models,
Sure.
like that. And yeah, I think it's a question of like, can that assistant give you the right precision to be like a sidekick, like you leave your computer for 10 minutes and hit him, you can like put these three columns together, change this calculation here, format this thing. You do it, like, yeah, I mean, that would be phenomenal, right? Like as someone who can kind of like do financial modeling somewhat, but I don't have the shortcuts at my fingertips anymore
Right.
and all of that. Like that's a real productivity booster, right? Like similarly for presentation, hey, please go through this board deck of 150 slides and make sure that every title is exactly the same number of pixels down and right. Like that would
Yeah.
save me and my OCD quite a lot of time, right?
Yep.
Think, if you and I can figure out how to get Copilot into our PowerPoint, then maybe just maybe, we get a day back per quarter, right?
But yeah, the speculation is it will be very beneficial. Now it's all about, like you said, discovery and access, which is an entirely separate episode. Cool. All right, Nikola, I think we're running out of time here. I really appreciate your time today. This was good stuff. Let's go. Let's go. Now I'm going to go distract myself by
Let's
creating
go.
creepy images for the next 2 hours. So
Yeah,
thanks for that
let's go.
inspiration.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go automate ourselves.
Then coming soon, we will have a fully generative episode. I can't wait for it. All right, man. Take care. Have a great day.
Have a good one. Bye.